What happens when the life you've built is a beautiful lie? For one woman, 9 months pregnant and deeply in love, her world was about to shatter on the biggest night of her husband's career. He told her he was attending his company's biggest gala alone, a crucial night for a promotion. But he wasn't alone. He was there with his mistress on his arm, ready to toast to their secret future. They thought she was at home, a simple, unassuming wife. They had no idea she wasn't just a guest. They had no idea she owned the entire company. This isn't just a story of heartbreak. It's the story of what happens when a powerful woman, pushed too far, decides to reclaim everything. The late afternoon sun, the color of honey, streamed through the bay windows of the brownstone, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny silent ballerinas. Stella Vance gently rubbed her swollen belly, a serene smile gracing her lips as she watched her husband, Liam Peterson, adjust his black bow tie in the hall mirror. He was breathtakingly handsome in his custom tuxedo, his dark hair expertly styled, a faint scent of expensive cologne, sandalwood and bergamot, clinging to him. "Are you sure you don't mind me going alone?" he asked, his reflection showing a flicker of something she couldn't quite decipher. Concern? Guilt? "Of course not, my love," Stella said, her voice soft and reassuring. She pushed herself up from the plush armchair, the weight of their unborn son making the simple act a gentle effort. The Auratech Innovators Gala is the biggest night of the year. You've worked so hard for that senior director promotion. You need to be there, networking, shaking hands. Liam worked as a senior project manager at Auratech Innovations, a titan in the tech industry. To Stella, he was the ambitious, driven provider. To him, she was his sweet, simple wife, a former art curator who had given up her modest career to build a home for him and their future family. It was a narrative he cherished, one he often repeated to his colleagues. "My Stella," he'd say with a patronizing fondness, "she's my sanctuary from the corporate shark tank. She has no head for business, just a heart of gold." He knew nothing of her truth. He had no idea that Vance, the name on her birth certificate, was the same Vance that had founded Auratech 3 decades ago. He didn't know that the company he was so desperate to climb was, in fact, her inheritance, her legacy. After her parents' tragic death in a plane crash 5 years ago, the entire controlling interest had passed to her. She had appointed a trusted family friend, Joel Croft, as the public-facing CEO, while she remained the silent, anonymous chairwoman of the board, guiding her empire from the shadows. She had craved a normal life, a love that wasn't transactional, a man who would love her, not the Vance fortune. She had thought Liam was that man. "I just feel terrible leaving you here," he said, turning to cup her face in his hands. His touch was cool. "Especially now. You should be the one in a beautiful gown, dripping with diamonds." Stella leaned into his touch, her heart aching with a love so profound it almost hurt. "Our time for that will come. Tonight is your night. Go make me proud." He kissed her, a brief, perfunctory press of his lips to hers. "I'll call you when it's over. Don't wait up. It'll be a late one. I love you." "I love you too," she whispered as he pulled away, grabbing his sleek leather briefcase from the hall table. She watched from the window as he slid into the back of a waiting black car. As it pulled away from the curb, another car, a sleek silver sedan, pulled up a few houses down. A woman stepped out. Stella's breath caught in her throat. It was Serafina Dubois, the notoriously ambitious head of marketing at Auratech. She was a vision in a shimmering, backless emerald gown by Vera Wang. Her fiery red hair swept into an elegant chignon. Liam's car stopped, and Serafina slipped into the back seat beside him. The car then sped off into the twilight. A cold dread, sharp and icy, seeped into Stella's bones. It couldn't be. It was just a coincidence. Liam was probably just giving his colleague a ride. He was a good man. Her husband, the father of her child. She tried to dismiss it, blaming the paranoia of late-stage pregnancy. But as she stood in the silent, empty hall, the lingering scent of his cologne seemed to mock her, a fragrant ghost of a lie she wasn't yet ready to confront. She walked back to the living room and sank into the armchair, her hand resting protectively over her baby, a sudden, fierce need to shield him from a world that had just tilted dangerously off its axis. The honey-colored light had faded, and the room was now filled with long, encroaching shadows. The next few weeks were a masterclass in self-deception for Stella. She clung to the image of her perfect marriage with the desperation of a drowning woman. Liam came home from the Gala euphoric, telling her how he'd impressed the board members, how the senior director position was practically his. He never mentioned Serafina. When Stella casually asked if he'd seen anyone from the marketing department, he'd shrugged. I might have seen Serafina Dubois across the room, but it was a madhouse. Barely had a moment to breathe. The lies were subtle, like hairline fractures in a porcelain vase. They were invisible from a distance, but if you looked close enough, you could see the whole structure was compromised. There was the credit card statement she saw by chance. A charge for a suite at the Grand Excelsior Hotel, the very hotel that hosted the gala. Why would he need a room when their home was a 20-minute drive away? When she asked, he had a ready answer. A few of us pitched in for a hospitality suite, a base of operations for the night. You know how these things are. Then came the scent. It wasn't Serafina's perfume. That would have been too obvious. It was a faint, floral note on his shirts when they came back from the dry cleaner, a brand of high-end fabric softener she never used. It was the scent of another home, another life. Her best friend, Chloe, a sharp-witted journalist who had been Stella's confidant since college, saw the cracks far more clearly. "I'm telling you, Stella, something is off," Chloe insisted over lunch one afternoon, her fork hovering over her salad. Men like Liam, who are that charming and that ambitious, they have a capacity for compartmentalization that would terrify you. "He's not like that," Stella defended, though her voice lacked conviction. "He's under a lot of pressure at work. The promotion is his excuse for everything," Chloe cut in, her eyes filled with concern. "Late nights, weekend meetings, unexplained expenses. Open your eyes. You're about to have a baby with this man. You're sitting on one of the largest private fortunes in the country, and he thinks you're just a simple little housewife. Does that not strike you as a monumentally dangerous imbalance?" Stella flinched. The secret of her identity was a heavy burden, a wall she had built around her heart to protect it. But now, she wondered if she had inadvertently built herself a prison. The confirmation she dreaded came from the one person who knew her secret. Joel Croft. Joel, the silver-haired, impeccably dressed CEO of Aura Tech, was more than an employee. He was a surrogate father. He had promised Stella's parents he would always look after her, and he took that promise seriously. He called her for their weekly clandestine business update. His voice, its usual calm, professional baritone. They discussed quarterly earnings, a new acquisition in the AI sector, and the planning for the upcoming annual Aura Tech Legacy Charity Ball, a far more exclusive and significant event than the Innovators Gala. "Everything is on track," Joel said. "The venue is confirmed, the guest list is nearly finalized. As always, your attendance is optional, but your presence would mean a great deal to the foundation." "I'll think about it, Joel. It's getting a little difficult to travel," she said, rubbing her aching back. There was a pause. When Joel spoke again, his voice was softer, laced with a paternal worry that set Stella on edge. "Stella, is everything all right at home? With Mr. Peterson?" The question was so direct, so out of character for the ever-discreet Joel, that Stella's carefully constructed denial began to crumble. "Why do you ask?" "There is talk," he said hesitantly. "Office gossip. I pay it no mind, of course, but it is persistent. It concerns your husband and Seraphina Dubois. There are rumors of an affair, that they are positioning themselves as the next power couple within the company. I've seen them myself, lunching together." His hand on the small of her back, a moment too long. "It could be nothing. But my duty is to you, Stella, in all things." The words hung in the air, cold and heavy. Office gossip, power couple, his hand on her back, the silver sedan, the hotel suite, the floral-scented shirts. It all coalesced into a single, ugly truth. The world tilted again, and this time Stella didn't fight it. She let it spin, let the nausea rise in her throat. The pain was sharp, a physical blow to her heart that radiated through her entire body, making her gasp. She thought of the baby, her son, nestled safely inside her, oblivious to his father's betrayal. A new feeling began to bloom in the wreckage of her heart, crowding out the pain, a cold, hard, unfamiliar fury. She had given this man everything, her love, her trust, her body, a home. She had hidden her power to make him feel like a king, and he had repaid her by making her a fool. "Joel," she said, her voice trembling but gaining strength with each word. "The legacy ball. When is it?" "In 2 weeks, Saturday, the 18th of October. "I will be attending," she said, a chilling resolve in her tone. "And I won't be coming as Stella Peterson. I will be coming as Stella Vance. I want you to make the arrangements. I want a spotlight. I want a microphone. And I want to be the keynote speaker who introduces the new philanthropic initiative." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line, followed by a low, approving hum. "Consider it done, Miss Vance," Joel said, the formal title a clear acknowledgement of the shift that had just occurred. "Welcome back." When Stella hung up the phone, the tears finally came. But they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of rage, of a woman scorned, of a queen who had just remembered she was wearing a crown. Liam had no idea what was coming. He and his mistress were playing checkers in a world where she was the grand master of chess, and she was about to checkmate them both. The 2 weeks leading up to the Auratech Legacy Ball were a surreal ballet of duality. At home, Stella played the part of the devoted, slightly oblivious, pregnant wife. She feigned fatigue, complained about swollen ankles, and listened with a serene, patient smile as Liam spun his web of lies. His excitement about the ball was palpable, but it was an excitement that clearly had nothing to do with her. "It's the real inner circle this time," he explained one evening, loosening his tie as he sat on the edge of their bed. "Not like the Innovators' Gala. This is where the big decisions are made. All the VPs, the board members, even old Joel Croft himself. Seraphina says if I can get 5 minutes with Marcus Thorne, the CFO, I can seal the deal on the directorship." "Seraphina says?" Stella asked, her voice deliberately light as she folded a tiny baby blanket. "Yeah, you know, she's the marketing guru. She knows how these things work, who to talk to. She's been a great mentor," he said, completely missing the flicker of ice in his wife's eyes. He had a new spring in his step, a new arrogance. He bought new, more expensive suits from designers like Tom Ford. He started wearing a ridiculously expensive watch, a Patek Philippe, that he claimed he got for a steal from a friend. Stella knew it was a lie. She had seen the preliminary expense reports Joel had discreetly forwarded her. Serafina Dubois had approved a discretionary marketing bonus to Liam Peterson for 10 times the normal amount. He was using her own company's money to fund his affair. The audacity was breathtaking. The night of the ball arrived, cloaked in a crisp autumn chill. The entire affair was designed to be a public performance of their crumbling marriage. "You look tired, sweetheart," Liam said, stroking her hair as she lay on the couch, pretending to be asleep. "You should rest. I'll be back as late as I can, I promise." No, you go," she murmured, feigning a sleepy protest. "It's important. Just be safe." "Always," he said, kissing her forehead. The scent of his cologne, the same sandalwood and bergamot, filled her senses, but now it smelled of deceit. He left. Stella waited exactly 10 minutes, her heart pounding a steady, rhythmic drumbeat of purpose. Then she rose. The tired, docile wife vanished. In her place was a woman on a mission. Upstairs, laid out on the guest room bed, was her armor. It wasn't a shimmering gown. It was a custom-designed, midnight blue maternity dress by Oscar Renter. Elegant and powerful. It was tailored to accentuate, not hide, her pregnancy, celebrating it as a source of strength. Beside it lay the Vance family jewels, a breathtaking diamond and sapphire necklace that hadn't seen the light of day in years. Chloe arrived to help her get ready, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and nervous excitement. "Are you sure about this? This is going to be thermonuclear." "He made his choice," Stella said, her voice steady as she sat at her vanity. "He chose to humiliate me. He just doesn't realize he chose the wrong woman to humiliate." As Chloe's friend, a professional makeup artist, worked her magic, transforming Stella's soft features into a visage of regal authority, Stella made a final call. "Joel, it's time." "The car is waiting a block away, Ms. Vance," his voice came through the speakerphone. "The stage is set. Security has been briefed. They know who you are. No one gets in your way." "And Liam Peterson?" "He and Ms. Dubois arrived 20 minutes ago. They made quite the entrance. He's introducing her as his partner." A bitter smile touched Stella's lips. Partner. He had no idea. When she was ready, she stood before the mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger. Her eyes, expertly lined, held a formidable fire. The Vance sapphires glittered at her throat, cold and brilliant. Her hand rested on the proud curve of her stomach. She was not a victim. She was a matriarch, a leader, the silent force behind a global empire. She was coming to reclaim her throne. "Knock 'em dead," Chloe whispered, handing Stella her clutch. "Oh," Stella said with a chilling calm. "I intend to." The Viridian Ballroom at the Grand Excelsior Hotel was a symphony of opulence. Crystal chandeliers, each the size of a small car, cast a dazzling, diamond-like light over the city's elite. The air hummed with the clinking of champagne flutes, polite laughter, and the low thrum of powerful conversations. It was a room where fortunes were made, and careers were shattered with a single handshake or a whispered rumor. Liam Peterson felt like he was finally at the center of the universe. With Serafina on his arm, he was no longer just a project manager. He was a man of consequence. She was his golden ticket, a statuesque goddess in a liquid gold dress that clung to her every curve. She navigated the room with the predatory grace of a lioness, introducing Liam to executives he'd only ever seen in corporate newsletters. "Marcus, darling," Serafina purred, air-kissing the cheek of Marcus Thorne, the formidable CFO. "I want you to meet Liam Peterson. He's the brilliant mind behind the Phoenix Project. We're expecting big things from him." Liam shook Thorne's hand, his grip firm, his smile confident. "A pleasure, sir. I've long admired your fiscal strategies." "Peterson," Thorne grunted, his eyes giving Liam a quick, dismissive appraisal. "Good work on Phoenix. Keep it up." It was a small victory, but to Liam it felt monumental. He was in. He and Serafina were a team, a force. They found a table near the front, sharing smug smiles over their champagne. "See?" she whispered, her lips brushing his ear. "They love you. They see what I see. By the end of the night, that senior director job will be yours, and once you have it, we can finally stop hiding. You can leave that boring little wife of yours and we can be together, properly." The thought sent a thrill through him. A life with Serafina, a life of power, glamour, and public adoration was within his grasp. He felt a pang of guilt for Stella, so sweet, so fragile, waiting for him at home. But he quickly crushed it. She wouldn't understand this world. She belonged in her quiet, domestic bubble. This was his world. He deserved this. On stage, Joel Croft, looking distinguished in a classic tuxedo, tapped the microphone. The room gradually fell silent. "Good evening, everyone," Joel began, his resonant voice commanding attention. "Welcome to the Auratech Legacy Ball. Tonight, we celebrate not just our successes, but the enduring vision of our founders, Thomas and Marianne Vance." A polite round of applause rippled through the ballroom. "Their legacy of innovation and integrity is the bedrock upon which this company is built," Joel continued. "For years, that legacy has been stewarded from behind the scenes by a successor who values privacy and substance over the spotlight, a leader who believes that actions speak louder than awards." A murmur of curiosity spread through the crowd. This was new. The leadership of Auratech had always been attributed to Joel and the board. The idea of a silent, unnamed power was tantalizing. Liam leaned toward Serafina, a smirk on his face. A bit of corporate theater. Joel loves this dramatic nonsense. "Tonight," Joel's voice boomed, cutting through the whispers. "For the first time, that leader has decided to step into the light, to share with us a bold, new, philanthropic vision that will define the next chapter of Auratech." The tension in the room was electric. Who was it? A reclusive billionaire, a foreign investor. "Ladies and gentlemen," Joel announced, his voice swelling with pride and a hint of emotion. "It is my profound honor to introduce to you the majority shareholder, the chairwoman of the board of Auratech Innovations, and the daughter of our revered founders." At that precise moment, the grand double doors at the back of the ballroom swung open. A single powerful spotlight cut through the dimness, illuminating the figure standing in the doorway. Time seemed to slow down. The collective gasp of the room was a physical force. It was Stella, but it was not the Stella anyone knew. She was a vision of breathtaking power. Her midnight blue gown flowed around her, the Vance sapphires at her throat, catching the light and scattering it like fractured stars. Her expression was serene, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces, her hand resting on her pregnant belly, not as a sign of vulnerability, but as a symbol of dynasty, of future, of legacy. Liam Peterson's champagne flute slipped from his numb fingers, shattering on the polished marble floor. The sound was lost in the deafening silence. His face, which moments before had been flushed with triumph, was now a ghastly, bloodless white. His mind reeled, trying to process the impossible sight before him. Stella? His Stella? Here, beside him, Serafina's perfectly made-up face contorted in confusion, which quickly morphed into dawning horror as Joel Croft's final words echoed through the ballroom, sealing their fate. "Ms. Stella Vance." The name hung in the air, an explosion in the silence. Vance. For Liam, the world tilted and fell away. Vance. the name on their marriage certificate, a name he had always considered plain, unassuming. The name of the company's founder. The pieces of the puzzle, so long ignored, slammed together in his mind with brutal, devastating force. Her quiet wealth that she'd explained away as a modest inheritance. Her lack of interest in his boring office stories. Her gentle, knowing smiles. It wasn't disinterest. It was ownership. He hadn't been climbing the corporate ladder. He had been a rat in a maze of her design. He stared at his wife, the woman he had dismissed, cheated on, and planned to leave. She wasn't just a woman. She was an empress, and he had been dancing like a fool in her court. Every eye in the room was on Stella as she began to walk, her steps slow, deliberate, and impossibly graceful. Security guards, men who looked like they could bend steel, materialized from the shadows, flanking her path, their presence a clear, unspoken statement of her importance. The crowd parted before her, as if by royal decree. Her eyes, cold and clear as a winter sky, scanned the room, but they were fixed on one destination: the stage. She did not look at Liam. She did not acknowledge his existence. This calculated indifference was 1,000 times more cutting than any scream or accusation could ever be. It rendered him insignificant. Serafina, next to him, was frozen, her mouth slightly agape. The color had drained from her face, leaving her lipstick a garish slash of red against her pale skin. Her entire strategy, her future, her power couple fantasy had just been annihilated by a pregnant woman in a blue dress. She looked from Stella to Liam and back, a silent, venomous accusation in her eyes. "You told me she was a nobody." As Stella reached the stage, Joel Croft extended a hand to help her up the steps, bowing his head slightly in a gesture of profound respect. She took the microphone from him, her hand steady. The entire ballroom held its breath. "Thank you, Joel," she began, her voice calm and clear, amplified throughout the vast hall. It was the same soft voice she used at home. But here, in this context, it held an astonishing weight of authority. "For those of you who do not know me, my name is Stella Vance. My parents, Thomas and Marianne Vance, founded this company on a simple principle: that innovation should serve humanity. That integrity is not a commodity to be bought or sold, but the very soul of our enterprise." She paused, letting her eyes sweep over the sea of faces, the powerful executives, the board members, her employees. She finally let her gaze drift towards the table where Liam and Serafina sat, entombed in their public humiliation. Her eyes met Liam's for a fleeting second. There was no anger in her expression, no pain. There was only a chilling finality, the look one gives to something that is already over. "Tonight," she continued, turning her attention back to the wider audience, "I am here to announce the Vance Legacy Foundation, a new philanthropic arm of Auratech, endowed with an initial $500 million. A wave of shocked murmurs and applause broke out. Stella waited for it to subside, her composure absolute. This foundation will be dedicated to funding education in underserved communities, advancing medical research, and championing ethical technological development. It will be a testament to our core values." Her hand moved to rest once more on her stomach. "It will be the legacy I build for my child, and the standard to which I will hold every single person associated with Auratech." Her gaze hardened, becoming sharp as a diamond. "Because integrity," she repeated, her voice dropping slightly, becoming more intense, "is everything. It is the trust our customers place in us. It is the trust we place in each other. Any individual who compromises that integrity, who places personal ambition and deceit above loyalty and honor has no place at Aura Tech Innovations." The words were a direct shot, and everyone knew it. The atmosphere in the room grew thick with tension. Marcus Thorne, the CFO, shot a dark look towards Liam's table. Other executives shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact with the now infamous pair. "Therefore," Stella said, her voice ringing with indisputable power, "as my first official act in this public role, I have instructed Mr. Croft to begin a complete top-down review of management, effective immediately. We will be restructuring to eliminate any redundancies and to ensure that every leadership position is held by someone who embodies the principles on which this company was founded." She then turned her head slightly, her eyes locking directly onto Serafina Dubois. "For example, someone who uses their corporate authority to approve unmerited bonuses from company funds to a subordinate for personal reasons is not just acting unethically. They are committing theft. They are stealing from every employee, every shareholder, and the very legacy we are here to celebrate." Serafina visibly flinched, as if she had been physically struck. Her face, a mask of horror, crumpled. "That is a fireable offense," Stella stated, her voice as cold and hard as the sapphires at her neck, "and it will not be tolerated." She held her gaze on Serafina for a moment longer, before turning back to the room, a gracious smile returning to her lips, as if nothing had happened. "I look forward to working with all of you to build a better future. Thank you." The ballroom erupted in thunderous applause, a mixture of genuine admiration for her power and sheer terror of it. Stella Vance had not just made an entrance. She had executed a corporate coup and a personal revenge in a single flawless speech. She handed the microphone back to Joel, gave a final, regal nod to the audience, and turned to walk off the stage, leaving utter devastation in her wake. The gala descended into controlled chaos. As Stella exited the stage, she was immediately surrounded by a phalanx of security and the most powerful members of the board, all clamoring to congratulate her and pledge their loyalty. She handled them with a grace and poise that belied her years, as if she'd been born to do nothing else. She was no longer hiding. She was home. Across the room, Liam and Serafina were radioactive. People actively averted their gazes, tables near them suddenly finding urgent reasons to get drinks or fresh air. The whispers were merciless. "Did you see his face? She approved his bonuses. Can you believe the audacity? They're both finished." Liam tried to stand, his legs weak and trembling. He had to get to her. He had to explain. But what could he possibly say? "I'm sorry I didn't realize you were one of the most powerful women in the country. I'm sorry I betrayed you, but I thought you were unimportant." The absurdity of his position was a physical weight, crushing him. He took a step, lurching forward, his eyes wild with desperation. "Stella!" he called out, his voice hoarse. He never made it a second step. Two of the security guards who had been watching him intently moved with silent, swift efficiency. One placed a firm, immovable hand on his chest. "Sir," the guard said, his voice polite but unyielding, "I think it's time for you to leave." "That's my wife," Liam protested, his voice cracking. "I need to talk to my wife." "Ms. Vance does not wish to be disturbed," the guard replied, his grip tightening slightly. "We can escort you out. Please do not make a scene." Serafina was already on her feet, gathering the shreds of her dignity. She shot Liam a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. "You pathetic fool," she hissed, her voice low and trembling with rage. "You ruined me." Without another word, she turned and fled, her golden dress a mocking shimmer as she disappeared through a side exit, a pariah in the world she had tried so desperately to conquer. Defeated, Liam allowed himself to be escorted from the ballroom like a common trespasser. The walk of shame through the opulent lobby, past the curious stares of hotel staff and guests, was the most agonizing journey of his life. He was bundled into a waiting car, not a luxury sedan this time, but a simple taxi summoned by hotel security. The drive home was a blur of flashing lights and suffocating regret. He stumbled into the brownstone, the house that had been his sanctuary, his gilded cage. It was silent. He called out her name, Stella, but only the echo answered him. In the hallway, where his briefcase had once sat, there were now 3 perfectly packed suitcases and a banker's box. His suits, his expensive shoes, his Patek Philippe watch. All of his belongings were neatly assembled, waiting for his departure. On top of the box was a simple, thick cream envelope. His name was written on it in her elegant, familiar script. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a termination letter from Auratech Innovations, signed by Joel Croft. It cited gross misconduct and misuse of company funds. It was cold, corporate, and absolute. The second document was from her lawyers. They were divorce papers. She was citing infidelity and irreconcilable differences. The petition also included a restraining order, preventing him from coming within 500 feet of her residence, or any Auratech property. He sank to the floor, the papers scattering around him. He had lost everything in a single night: his job, his reputation, his future, and his wife. The one person he had taken for granted, the one person who had truly loved him, had excised him from her life with the surgical precision of a master strategist. He finally understood. He hadn't just cheated on his wife, he had betrayed the Queen. And in her kingdom, there was no forgiveness for treason. He was an exile, cast out of the paradise he had never even realized he was in. The silence of the house pressed in on him, a heavy shroud for the life he had so arrogantly destroyed. 3 months later, the winter snow fell in thick, silent blankets over the city, covering the grime and making the world seem clean and new. From her corner office on the top floor of the Auratech Tower, an office she had finally claimed as her own, Stella Vance watched the flakes drift down. Her hand rested on her belly, which was now a magnificent, proud globe. The birth of her son was only weeks away. The aftermath of the legacy ball had been swift and decisive. Serafina Dubois had vanished from the corporate world, her reputation in tatters. Liam, after a few desperate, unanswered calls from a blocked number, had faded into obscurity. Stella heard through a third party that he had moved back to his hometown in Ohio, taking a low-level sales job. He was a ghost from a life she no longer recognized. Her own life had transformed utterly. Stepping into the light had been terrifying, but also profoundly liberating. The business world, initially skeptical of the secret heiress, was quickly won over by her sharp intellect, her clear vision, and her unwavering commitment to the ethical principles she had espoused on that stage. She wasn't just her parents' daughter. She was a formidable leader in her own right. Joel remained by her side as CEO, their partnership a perfect blend of his experience and her innovative drive. The Vance Legacy Foundation was already making headlines, its first major grant establishing a nationwide coding boot camp for underprivileged high school students. Her personal life had found a new, quieter rhythm. Chloe was a constant presence, a doting aunt-in-waiting who helped her assemble the crib and debated baby names with her over decaf lattes. The brownstone, once a place of painful memories, had been redecorated. The heavy, dark furniture Liam had favored was replaced with light, airy pieces. The walls were painted in soft, warm colors. It was her home now, hers and her son's. There were moments, late at night, when a phantom ache of what she'd lost would surface. She had truly loved Liam, or at least the man she thought he was. She mourned the family she had dreamed of, the simple, happy life she had once craved. But the grief was no longer a storm. It was a gentle rain, a cleansing sadness that reminded her of her own resilience. She had learned the hardest lesson of all, that sometimes the greatest love story is the one you write for yourself. One afternoon, Joel entered her office with a small velvet box. "This came for you, Miss Vance." Stella opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of silk, was a single, perfect baby rattle, exquisitely crafted from polished silver. There was no card. But she knew. It was a peace offering, a final, pathetic gesture from a man she would never see again. For a long moment, she stared at it. Then she closed the box and handed it back to Joel. "Donate it," she said, her voice soft but firm. "The foundation can auction it off. Let something good come from it." He nodded, understanding completely. As he left, Stella turned back to the window, a small, genuine smile on her lips. She placed both hands on her belly as she felt a strong, reassuring kick from within. "It's just us now, little one," she whispered to her son, "and we are going to build a better world." The snow continued to fall, burying the past and paving the way for a future of her own making, a future built not on secrets and lies, but on strength, integrity, and the enduring power of a woman who had found her own legacy. The birth of Thomas Joel Vance was not a quiet affair. It was, true to his mother's new life, a meticulously planned operation. Stella had checked into a private wing of the city's most exclusive hospital under an assumed name, with a security detail that would rival a head of state's. When her son finally arrived, a healthy, 7-pound marvel with a tuft of dark hair like his father's and a determined gaze like his mother's, Stella felt a love so fierce and absolute it eclipsed everything that had come before. The pain of Liam's betrayal, the weight of her corporate responsibilities, it all faded into the background noise of the universe. All that mattered was the tiny, perfect being cradled in her arms. "He's a Vance, through and through," Joel said, his eyes crinkling with genuine emotion as he stood by her bedside, looking at the baby. He had been the first person she'd called after Chloe. "I gave him your name as his middle name," Stella said softly, "for loyalty, for integrity, so he never forgets what's important." Joel was visibly moved, clearing his throat. "It is the greatest honor of my life, Stella." The first few months were a whirlwind of sleepless nights and board meetings conducted via video conference from her nursery. Stella proved to be as adept at motherhood as she was at running a multi-billion-dollar company. She found a quiet strength she never knew she possessed, a profound sense of purpose that made her be past life, the life where she had hidden herself for a man's approval, feel like a distant, half-forgotten dream. The world had moved on. Oratech's stock was soaring under her visible leadership. The Vance Legacy Foundation was a celebrated success. Stella Vance was a symbol of female empowerment, her story a modern legend whispered in boardrooms and business schools. But ghosts, she was learning, do not always stay buried. The first echo of her past arrived on a crisp spring morning, delivered by a courier to the Oratech Tower. It was a thick legal envelope, addressed directly to her. Inside, a letter from a law firm in Columbus, Ohio. Her blood ran cold as she read the first line. "Dear Ms. Vance, we are writing on behalf of our client, Mr. Liam Peterson, regarding his paternal rights concerning the child, Thomas Joel Vance." The letter went on, a soulless composition of legal jargon and veiled threats. Liam was demanding court-ordered paternity testing, followed by a formal petition for joint custody and, of course, substantial child support commensurate with her income. He was positioning himself as a loving father, cruelly cut off from his son by a vindictive, powerful ex-wife. Chloe, who was in the office having lunch with Stella, snatched the letter and read it, her face darkening with every word. The unmitigated gall of that man. Joint custody. He doesn't want the baby, Stella. He wants an annuity. He wants to latch onto your fortune for the next 18 years. Stella didn't respond immediately. She stared out at the city skyline, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of her marble desk. The fierce, protective love she felt for Thomas now curdled into an equally fierce, cold rage. Liam had abandoned them. He had been prepared to leave his pregnant wife for another woman. He had shown no interest, made no contact, offered no apology. Now, hearing of her success and the birth of his son, he had crawled out of the woodwork, not with remorse, but with a sense of entitlement. He wanted to use her son, their son, as a weapon. A pawn in a game for money and relevance. He sought to tether their futures together through a legal document, forcing his poison back into their lives. "Get Robert Sterling on the line," Stella said, her voice dangerously calm. Robert Sterling was the head of her legal team, a shark in a Savile Row suit. "Tell him to spare no expense. I want a team of private investigators digging into every second of Liam Peterson's life since the day he left this city. I want to know what he eats for breakfast, who he talks to, every dollar he's spent. I want to know every skeleton in his closet." "What are you going to do?" Chloe asked, a little in awe of her friend's immediate shift from stunned mother to formidable queen. Stella's eyes, when they turned from the window, were like chips of ice. "He thinks he can use my son as a bargaining chip. He has forgotten who I am. I'm not just going to deny his claim. I'm going to make him regret he ever had the audacity to make it. I'm going to bury him." Liam Peterson was a man drowning in mediocrity. His low-level sales job was a soul-crushing grind of cold calls and rejection. He lived in a cramped, depressing apartment that smelled of stale beer and desperation. Every time he went online, he was assaulted by images of Stella's success. Stella Vance, tech visionary, on the cover of Forbes. Billionaire CEO Stella Vance pledges another $100 million to STEM education. A new mother, a new legacy, inside Stella Vance's world. It was a constant, humiliating reminder of the kingdom he had lost. His lawsuit was his last, desperate gamble, but the initial response from Stella's legal team was a monolithic wall of defiance. They were dragging the process out, bleeding him dry with procedural motions he couldn't afford to fight. It was in a dingy Ohio bar, nursing his third whiskey, that a ghost from his own past found him. "You look like hell, Liam." He looked up. Serafina Dubois stood before him. She was thinner, harder. The Vera Wang gowns and glamorous updos were gone, replaced by jeans, a leather jacket, and an expression of bitter resentment that mirrored his own. Her corporate career was over, blacklisted by the sheer gravitational pull of Stella's influence. She was doing freelance marketing consulting for piddling local businesses. "Serafina," he slurred, "what are you doing here?" "I heard about your lawsuit," she said, sliding into the booth opposite him. "Bold move, but you're playing her game. Legal battles on her turf? She'll bankrupt you before you ever see the inside of a courtroom." She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with a manic fire. "You're trying to fight a queen with a lawyer. You need to fight her like a revolutionary. You need to destroy her reputation." And so, the unholy alliance was formed, born of shared bitterness and a thirst for revenge. Serafina, with her PR savvy, devised a plan. They would bypass the courts and go straight to the court of public opinion. They would craft a story for the tabloid media, a salacious, heartbreaking tale of a simple, loving man whose powerful wife had an affair, became pregnant, and then framed him and his loyal colleague to steal the family company. The baby, they would claim, might not even be his. It was a vile, poisonous narrative designed to do maximum damage. They found their weapon in a notorious online gossip columnist named Marcus Thorne, no relation to the Auratech CFO, a cosmic irony that was not lost on them. He was a journalist known for his willingness to publish explosive, thinly sourced stories for the right price. They were 2 days from sending Thorne their package of fabricated emails, staged photos, and a tearful, ghost-written interview with Liam when Stella made her move. She hadn't been idle. Her private investigators had been thorough. They had uncovered not only Liam's desperate financial state, but also Serafina's reappearance. They had bugged the bar, recorded the conversation, and tracked their communications with the columnist. Stella knew their entire playbook before they had even run the first play. Instead of preparing a defense, she launched a preemptive strike. Chloe, using her legitimate press credentials, arranged an exclusive primetime interview for Stella with Diana Sawyer, one of the most respected journalists in the country. The night before, Liam and Serafina's story was supposed to break. Stella appeared on national television from the living room of her brownstone. She looked serene and beautiful. Little Thomas, sleeping peacefully in a bassinet, just out of frame. She didn't speak of revenge or betrayal. With calm, unshakable dignity, she told her story. She spoke of her desire for a normal life, of falling in love with a man she thought loved her for who she was. She spoke of the heartbreak of discovering his affair on the night of the gala. "It was never about revenge," Stella said, her voice filled with quiet sincerity. "It was about protecting my parents' legacy, and eventually, my son's future. The decisions I made were to preserve the integrity of a company that employs thousands of people. I have no ill will toward my ex-husband. I simply wish for him to leave my son and me in peace." She was graceful, powerful, and utterly believable. She had framed the narrative, seizing control before the first shot was even fired against her. The final checkmate was delivered the next morning. As Liam and Serafina were meeting for coffee to celebrate their impending media victory, they were each approached by a lawyer from Stella's firm. They were not served with lawsuits. They were presented with binders. Liam's binder contained transcripts of his conversations with Serafina, detailing their conspiracy to defame Stella. It also contained damning evidence of financial fraud from his time at Auratech, expense report manipulations he thought were too minor to be noticed. Serafina's binder was worse. It contained not only the evidence of their current conspiracy, but also proof, uncovered by Stella's investigators, that she had been selling proprietary company data to a competitor for months before the gala. It was corporate espionage. It was a federal crime. The deal was simple. All lawsuits and public claims were to be dropped immediately. They would both sign ironclad non-disclosure agreements, agreeing never to speak of Stella or Auratech again. In exchange, the evidence in the binders would remain private. If they refused, or if one word of their story ever leaked, the evidence would be forwarded to the U.S. Attorney's office. It was not a negotiation. It was a surrender. Defeated and exposed, they signed. Their alliance dissolved into bitter, silent recriminations. They vanished from each other's lives, and, more importantly, from Stella's. Weeks later, Stella stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in her office, rocking a now gurgling Thomas in her arms. The city glittered below them, a kingdom of glass and steel. The threats were gone. The ghosts were buried for good. She had faced the ultimate betrayal and the ugliest of human emotions, and she had emerged not just victorious, but stronger. "Look, my sweet boy," she whispered, kissing the top of his head. "It's all yours one day. But the most important thing I will ever give you is not in any of these buildings. It's a lesson. True power isn't about crushing your enemies. It's about having the strength to build a world where they can't touch you." The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the promise of a new day. For Stella Vance and her son, it was the dawn of a legacy, finally and truly secure. Stella's story is a powerful reminder that the quietest people often have the loudest minds and the strongest wills. It's a story about the devastating cost of betrayal, but more importantly, it's about the incredible strength it takes to rise from the ashes of heartbreak. Not as a victim, but as the architect of your own destiny. She didn't just reclaim her company. She reclaimed her power, her name, and her future for herself and her child. Her revenge wasn't just about punishing the guilty, it was about building a better legacy. Have you ever witnessed someone underestimate a person, only to be completely stunned by who they truly were? What did you think of Stella's epic reveal? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were captivated by this story of empowerment and sweet revenge, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with someone who loves a story where justice is served, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable tales. Don't forget to click that notification bell so you're the first to know when a new story drops. Thank you for listening.